Welcome everyone! Don't you hate it when your opponent clearly plays for a draw and basically tries to kill the game from the start? Well, today you'll see someone like that getting crushed, and you'll also see how nice it is to play with a space advantage. This is a game between Bobby Fischer and Romanian Grandmaster Florin Gheorghiu. Fischer had white and opened with e4, e5, and after knight to f3, Black also developed his king's knight, and we have the Russian defense, also known as the Petroff. This is a super solid defense, also used by a number of world champions, but it does have a drawish reputation. Let's just say you don't choose the Petroff to play for a win. Anyway, Fischer took on e5, which is the main move. d6, knight to f3, knight takes e4, all still the main moves. Then d4, claiming more central control. But then bishop to e7 was played, and that's certainly a more passive way to go. Usually after d4, black also grabs more space with d5. After bishop to d3, develop the other knight. And after castles, only then bishop e7. At least here, black has a strong pawn on d5 and a knight on e4. Compare this to the game. After bishop to d3, the knight retreats. Of course, black is solid, but black is lacking space and active pieces. Now, a very instructive move by Fischer, h3. Normally, you don't want to play these little pawn moves too easily, because preventing the pin isn't always necessary, but in this case it's a very good move. As a rule, when you have more space, avoid trading pieces. By going h3, Black won't trade off his bishop, and the bishop will also be passive. Both players castled. Rook to e8, then c4. Fischer's grabbing more space. Knight to c6, knight to c3. And here h6 was played, which isn't a bad move. Black wants to go bishop to f8 and not have his knight pinned to the queen. But it does weaken f6 and it gives white a potential target, and we will see exactly how in this game. It continued rook to e1, bishop f8, then a rook trade, which black doesn't mind because he has less space, but Fischer did it for a specific reason. After bishop to f4, he has a plan. He wants to go queen to d2, rook to e1 and then d5, but he doesn't want to allow knight to e5. That's the main purpose of bishop f4 and rook to e1, but those are natural squares anyway. Gheorghiu developed the bishop to d7, then as planned queen to d2, queen to c8. Gheorghiu wants to trade more pieces with bishop to f5, but now after d5 we'll see another point of playing d5. After knight to b4, white will also use the d4 square for his knight, and Fischer's attack is coming very soon. But first, knight to e4. Now you may think black can take that bishop, but that wouldn't be good, because white first takes on f6, and then recaptures, and black doesn't want to play with this ruined kingside. So black traded knights, bishop takes. Now the black knight doesn't have a target anymore, so Gheorghiu decided to reroute it to c5. But then, as predicted, knight to d4, which also stops black's bishop to f5 plan. Knight to c5. Of course, Fischer reserved that bishop. a5, good move, that stops b2, b4, so the knight on c5 is secured now. But after rook to e1, black went queen to d8, and if allowed, black will unravel with queen to f6 and rook to e8. So what does Fischer do? He went rook to e3. Here's another important principle: when you have more space, start an attack, because if you give black time to unravel his pieces, you can easily lose your advantage. Now maybe black's best is still queen f6 anyway, and after rook to g3, go rook to e8. Yes, white can take that pawn, but black can back the two bishops with knight to e4, forking queen and rook, so white has to part with his light-squared bishop. After rook takes, the knight is hanging, so bishop to e3, and after a4, simply saving that pawn, black at least does have the two bishops, and he did manage to unravel his pieces. In the game, black played b6, but then rook to g3, and white is just set up perfectly to attack black's king, and black doesn't have a lot of defenders around, as you can see. Practically speaking, this is already massive trouble for black. Bishop takes h6 is a threat, so king to h8, but this runs into another problem. First, knight to f3, making room for the queen. Queen e7, now knight to e4 again would be strong, but after queen to d4, you can see that with king to h8, black only ran into another pin. Now bishop takes h6 again is the threat, and black has to do something he really doesn't want to do. He has to block out the white queen like this, but of course this trade leaves black's kingside in ruins and white's pieces are still around to continue the attack. The rook cuts the king off, both bishops are pointing at the king, the knight can go to f5, black is just lost at this point. Knight to d4, that knight is heading to f5. Black tried to claim the open foul, but Fischer just challenged that rook with rook to e3. Gheorghiu didn't trade, he went rook to b8. After rook takes, white can even go for g2, g4 and bring the king to h5, simply winning black's h-pawn and creating a passed pawn. Black didn't want to play that and went rook to b8, hoping for some counterplay with b5. After b3, b5 was played right away, but white can simply take on b5, and this actually worked out fine for white. Now the f5 square isn't guarded anymore. Fischer didn't hesitate and played knight to f5 right away. Now the h6 pawn is hanging and there's no way to save it. If h5, then simply knight to g3, and after h4 white wins the pawn anyway. Instead, bishop to d7 was played. Fischer won the pawn. Black brought the rook to b4, targeting the bishop, but Fischer had a plan that tops winning a piece, and that's giving checkmate. Rook to g3, threatening with rook g8 mate. Therefore the knight had to go, but after bishop takes, you can see white's bishops and rook are too much to handle for a lone king. Gheorghiu tried knight to e4 to block out the light-squared bishop, but then a check. Black's best would be king to g8, but after this trade, bishop takes f6 and rook to c3 winning another pawn, it's still completely hopeless. In the game it was even easier for Fischer because after the check, king to h7 was played, but then f3 simply pinning and winning, and so Gheorghiu resigned. Well, so much for playing solid and going for that draw. Normally the Petroff really is a good choice if you want to play safety first, but in this case black really handicapped himself by going bishop to e7 here, instead of the normal d5. Because of that, Fischer grabbed lots of space with d4, c4 and d5. He therefore had the better pieces, and once he ruined black's kingside, he really made it look easy. So the takeaway is, make sure you grab space and don't play passively. Let me know in the comments what you think of this game. If you liked the video, please do me a favor and simply like the video. And do subscribe to the channel. Check out the playlist for many more great games. I'll be seeing you guys again soon, and take care.